You're listening
to the CD Baby
CD Baby
DIY
Musician Podcast.
Hey there, and welcome to the CD Baby DIY Musician Podcast. My name is Kevin, and since this is a Roundtable edition, joining me are Chris and Robert.
Hello.
For our 50th episode spectacular. Woo! That's right. We made it to 50 episodes.
It's not really a birthday. What do you call that?
I don't know.
Well, we're all wearing party hats now.
That's right.
And nothing else.
So yeah, it's great. We made it to our 50th episode. And the funny thing, I was on our iTunes podcast page today and noticed we had 49 reviews.
49?
That's it?
Yes. And
come on.
First of all, we need to at least have 50, but there are way more listeners than 49 out there. And so for our 50th, your present to us is going to be to go to the iTunes podcast page.
Leave a real nice review.
A nice 5-star review.
Talk about how handsome Robert is.
He is single.
They can't see you.
So we would ask that that would be your gift to us for all the hours of labor we put into the show. I think that's fair.
I think it's fair. It's a good deal.
Decent trade-off, yeah.
But, you know, we've gone through 50 episodes, and so it's always the time we start thinking back about maybe what you've learned.
Think about times past.
Yes. All of us, you know.
Good times to bad times.
The bad times, that was like in episode like 15 through 25 where it nearly killed me to keep doing this podcast. But I persevered.
That's because I was sitting on his chest when he did the first 15.
He'd make me do push-ups while he's sitting on my back. But, you know, I was thinking a lot about, you know, what we've learned. The three of us are musicians in our own right and are pursuing music as well. So we're not just sitting around telling people what to do. We're actually trying things ourselves and learning ourselves. And I was reflecting on a lot of things that I learned. And I think the main thing I learned over doing these 50 podcasts is the idea of that your music and your music career is more of a community aspect than I think a lot of artists tend to think about, and that it takes a lot more than just you thinking about yourself, but thinking more of the betterment of your music community and how you as a group can do things to get noticed as opposed to just it being me. And
that's similar to what I was thinking I had learned, which is don't take DIY, do it yourself, quite literally. There's so many different areas to put your focus into now that assembling a good team around you is seeming pretty necessary these days, and you don't have to do it all yourself.
That's a good point. I feel like there's certain things that you know intellectually, but then there's sort of a deeper knowing, and I think that a lot of us can say that, you know that we need to be empathetic, that we need to, when we approach someone in the music business, like we approach a gatekeeper, we approach somebody who stands between us and what we want, and we know that we're supposed to be empathetic towards that person. We know that we need to sort of provide something that they want, but sometimes it's so easy to just be focused on what you want and therefore not, in the end, get what you actually want. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Basically, you know, if you're approaching, a magazine editor, if you want to get your album on a label, if you want to, play a venue, like anytime you approach someone who holds the keys to one of these things, you have to think about what they want and give that to them in order to get what you want.
Effort to invest in you.
I think if artists can learn that and understand that it's not just all about themselves and surround them with good people, that they'll be way ahead of the pack. All right, well, let's get into some news.
CD Baby.
CD Baby. Music. News.
Well, is it the sign of the times? Virgin announced that it will close all of the remaining Virgin megastores by summer. The first Virgin store in America opened its doors on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood on December 1992, but it closed early last year when its lease expired. Other stores that have already closed include the iconic Times Square store. U2 is making an excellent case for the old-fashioned physical collectible music. With the release of the band's new album, No Line on the Horizon, the box packaging seems inspired by how Apple packages their products. Inside, you'll find a poster of a different seascape photograph, a DVD of an Anton Corbijn film, and a hardcover book with interviews and photographs that document the making of the album. The CD case has a shiny mother-of-pearl effect logo superimposed over the photo, and inside there's another booklet and a fold-out poster. They're all tangible, grippable artifacts, and the list price is $95, but it can be found much cheaper at places like Amazon.com.
I think it also comes with a little U2 espresso mug with some chocolate-covered coffee beans as well.
I think so. Here at CD Baby, we recently announced our deal with Spotify, a new ad-supported subscription service that offers 2 tiers to their service, an ad-supported free version or an ad-free version that you can be accessed with a monthly fee. The Spotify service, which is currently only available in the UK, has all the major labels' content, plus, of course, the CD Baby catalog. There's been an enormous amount of buzz surrounding the launch of Spotify, as many people think this step towards the ad-supported streaming service is the future of music consumption. The band No Doubt is trying something new for their upcoming tour. For an additional $15 on top of the ticket price, fans who purchase tickets to the tour can join what is being called the Tour Club. The No Doubt Tour Club will give you access to digital downloads of the band's entire catalog. Yes, even all their hit records. The access to the download catalog is not immediate, but fans will receive an email with their access codes 30 days before the concert date in which they are holding a ticket for. No Doubt is also promising Tour Club members access to premium seats. And those are the news headlines that I saw that seemed interesting.
How much are these tickets?
They're probably $1,000. Well, actually, I don't know how long it's been since No Doubt toured, but here in the Northwest, they went on a tour with Blink-182, and they played this brand new state-of-the-art outdoor amphitheater that's not far from my house. Mm-hmm. And there was hardly anybody there. And the capacity, like full capacity with the hillside and everything's like 16,000 people, but there was like less than 4,000 people there. And I remember the ticket prices, the minimum like on the hill was $45. Anything in a seat was like $75, and it's just like people aren't going to pay that, especially that demographic. But I think what they're doing with this tour is kind of an interesting idea, and I'm surprised they've gotten permission to do so. I didn't really do research into, what they had done with their label and all that, but obviously they've done something to allow that kind of access. I mean, that's pretty amazing, $15 on top of the ticket price. So you're probably going to end up paying around $75 with fees, the ticket price, and the $15. But there were some other freebies that were coming with it too. But
I mean, it's brave. I think to their whole catalog. I mean, a lot of music companies would just be shivering in their boots if one of their major selling artists was like, "We'll give our whole catalog away for $15."
But in their case, one thing that might be interesting to see is how valuable their old catalog is, because their music's a little more trendy.
Yeah.
And it has a lot of value, but compared to like some other artists, like I mentioned, U2 has a new album. That's obviously going to be a much more valuable back catalog, where I could see someone like No Doubt, their catalog not having appeal to future generations.
And they really didn't they only put out 2 albums?
No, they have more than that.
Oh, they do?
They had one that was their big smash hit, kind of their first one, and the second one after that had some big songs, but they've had a few others since then. So, but it was just kind of an interesting idea, allowing people, to pay a little more. They're coming to the show, and the reason why I also like the idea is it's centered around the band, something they're doing, and building a direct relationship with the fans.
Well, and the nice thing is if they're playing songs from their whole catalog, then you can listen to it before the show.
It's an interesting idea. It's someone taking their tour and trying to build more of an income stream around their tour beyond ticket prices. And then, U2, their box set, I was looking at it online, and it's very impressive. And
I'm not sure how much of a defense that is of physical products, though, because I feel like that's an item priced at about $100. It's definitely for like the hardcore U2 fan, and everyone else, I'm sure, that's sort of casual U2 fan would be content with the download.
Yeah. Well, I did find it on Amazon for $65 new. And so I was like, that started to be like, oh, well, maybe.
Well, you're kind of a hardcore U2 fan,
Yeah,
though. So
you
that's
are.
Well, no, I'm middle of the road. You know, I'm borderline.
I don't know if I'd spend $60 on any music object.
The other thing that's interesting is, you know, U2's audience, they've got a pretty wide audience appeal. But I think one thing they've been really smart at is identifying who their core audience is. And their core audience isn't teenagers. And the kind of people that will want this are the kind of people that are a little older and have money and want that thing, that physical thing. It's impressive looking. And it's not some just throwaway box that you're going to stash somewhere.
Yeah. No, actually, I take that back because I did buy a $100 box set once. It was a whole bunch of different groups, but it's this beautiful box of old gospel music called Tower of Babel or something like that. I can't remember. So given the right package deal, I might bite.
And I think that's the main point that I wanted to make. Physical is only dead if you just put zero effort into it. You know, if you put the same amount of effort into your physical release as just throwing downloads up, then you're not going to draw people into your physical product. But there are still tons of people that want physical product. Story last week where 70% of people are still buy mainly CDs, which, you know, it's also spread among certain demographics. But if you give them something that entices them a little more, makes it a little more special, then you can appeal to those people as well.
I mean, relating to the Virgin megastores going out of business, I think that the problem those companies are facing is going along with the whole long tail theory. It's not that people aren't buying physical product, it's that people are buying so many varied artists' physical products now that it's difficult for stores to, I guess, warehouse and maintain that huge catalog as well as keeping multiple quantities of it. So,
well, that's what's frustrating to me about how the whole decline in CD sales gets painted in the media. Because if they included people like CD Baby, those numbers of decline wouldn't be as great. Like, they never mentioned that people stopped buying CDs from Virgin because they charged $20 a CD. Right. You know, they don't seem to mention that fact. And, you know, the appeal of music has been opened up so wide that you can't stock a narrow slice of music and be successful. And with a physical store, you can only hold so much. That's why you should buy all your albums at cdbaby.com. I think those are good thoughts about the news. Let's move on to the main subject that we're going to talk about today. And this was inspired by a post that you didn't write, Chris, but you put up on cdbaby.org, which, if you're not familiar, cdbaby.org is our CD Baby forum, displaying some of the best in classic software.
Vintage 1997.
But anyway, that's our forum, and so there's interesting articles and posts that pop up there. And this particular one was titled, "Why is it important that artists be paid for their art?" And Chris, since you put it up there and started up the craziness, why don't you tell us a little bit about
Sure.
what the point of that post was?
My friend Katie, who is the creative director of Opera Theater Oregon, wrote an entry on a theater blog discussion thing and then forwarded it to me. I thought it was really interesting. And incidentally, she's the person who also came up with the fun units term I was mentioning at the last roundtable. Basically, the gist of her diatribe is that with this sort of trend of artists of all kinds, but mostly musicians and theater folk, not being paid what she considers fair compensation for their work, it's making this divide where, like, everyone's becoming a hobbyist, or basically she's afraid that if you don't pay the people who are worthy and talented of being paid for their skill, then you're going to degrade all art to the point of hobbyists, and then the public won't really know the difference anymore between good and bad art. So it spurned a lot of interesting, angry discussion.
I mean, it's an interesting issue. I think a lot of musicians have real strong feelings about what they should be earning and how hard they struggle at their art. But my take on it, and I may fall under fire for this, is that, you know, we're living in a glut, especially with music. There's so many people making music out there that it's not as valuable. like what makes something valuable is how badly people want it. And when people want something badly, they will pay for it. And there are plenty of musicians who are making good livings out there, but there's a lot of musicians, a lot more musicians who aren't making good living at it, and they're bitter. I think that you need to realize that, you're operating in a glut market, and it's really hard to make a living, and there isn't as much demand as you wish there was.
I think one of her points, though, is like with the glut, it's a glut of no talent ass clowns. Beep. No, it's a glut of hobbyists who are not making great art, and because of the whole supply and demand thing, it's ruining it for people who do put a lot of effort in and make great art, or if you could objectively say what great art is. But
I don't see how it's any different now than it has been.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always bad artists making lots of money, for what they do, and that's because they're bad artists but good marketers, or they have good marketers behind them.
It reminded me of when I was going out to Nashville to visit the college I was planning on attending, Belmont University, and my aunt and uncle didn't live too far away, and we stopped by and visit them, and my uncle basically said, "Why do you want to major in music? You'll never make any money." And so that was like in 91. So not a whole lot's changed on that front as far as people's attitudes. I have my own little personal blog where I kind of write about this stuff, and it's at kevinbruner.com. Shameless plug again. But I've been thinking a lot about what it takes to be a professional, just starting completely from scratch, and trying, kind of reflecting on my past experiences of touring professionally and all that, and thinking, is it even possible to get to that point again? What makes a professional? And being more in the local scene now, because I've never really played in a local scene before, and kind of seeing, what makes everyone else participating in this scene either professional or just really a hobbyist, no matter how much time they're putting into it, no matter how good they write their songs. So I was kind of reflecting on that, and I think, a lot of it is that the artist community expects the public at large to take them serious as professionals, but I don't think that's a battle worth fighting. Any career or professional pursuit that has a hobbyist component is always going to fight that battle. Same with, athletes probably deal with the same thing. People think, what's the deal with being a professional athlete? They just goof off all day, and so they kind of have that impression of musicians as well. And I don't think you're going to change public opinion. And I think the one thing you can do is not let them kind of color what you think a professional musician should be, or how you pursue your music or career if you want to be a true professional.
Well, and I think that for our purposes, it's useful to use the words hobbyist versus professional, but I also think that those are arbitrary terms. I think that, at least when it comes down to me, it's much more of an emotional experience, like the music I make. I'm passionate about it, and it's something that I love. I don't think of it as a hobby. I don't think of it as a profession. I think of it as something that, is an art form, and it's sacred, and it's something that I want to put all my best energy into and make it as good as I possibly can. And I'm successful if it succeeds. I'm not successful if I get, some cash. I'm just successful if the art I create succeeds and I feel like I've made success and people react to it.
But the point of her blog wasn't that, though.
Right. I know.
And that's what the reaction was, is that I think that's great. And I think there's a lot of people that have the exact feeling you do, but then they have that feeling and feel like they deserve to be paid for it, which I think there's two lines of distinction there. And while I wouldn't say you would fall under the hobbyist thing in the classic sense of, someone buying a model airplane and putting it together and crashing it out in their backyard, but in the sense that...
Well, I'm not out there. I'm not touring. I still haven't got my band back together.
Getting the band back together.
I'm trying to get the band back together, but I'm not acting in all the ways that I should be acting if I were going to make it my career right now.
And that's would be my counterpoint to the argument she makes, where she's saying that people should just go out of their way to pay for art. And the whole thread of the post, a lot of people started talking about piracy and things. And I don't think it's as much as how well you do your art, but kind of a mindset of, if you want to be a professional, there's other things that go along with it that are way outside of what you just mentioned. And
Oh, and I was also going to say, it's an interesting thing to think about where music and commerce are meeting. The professional is also maybe someone who is compromising bits of their art on behalf of marketing, or strategically putting themselves in a place to make money, because, you know, you think if you're a pure artist, you know, maybe the music you're making is not going to have mass appeal and make you a bunch of money.
And that's one of the main points I made on my blog post, was that when you become a professional, under the definition of professional that I would use for this, I'm not necessarily talking about making a lot of money. I'm talking about more of a mindset, professional mindset. You have to take everything that goes along with having a job and assign it to your art. And suddenly your art becomes a bit of a chore. It becomes your job. And,
Right.
you know, working at CD Baby here is a blast. I love it. I wouldn't want to be working anywhere else, but it's not like I'm having a party all day at my desk.
Yeah.
You know, there's stuff I have to do that it's like, this isn't as much fun as, you know, sitting and talking to people on a podcast.
Yeah,
you know?
it's like I got 45 emails in my inbox, and the phone's ringing off the hook.
And so those kind of things you have to take, and the work aspect, and it becomes a part of your art. And also,
But let's say you are working that hard and you're really doing everything you can to treat it professionally, and maybe you've paid off your $15,000 recording with touring and all this stuff, and you're managing a very sound business. But don't you feel like this trend of the general public feeling like they don't need to pay for music or pay less to go to see shows, don't you think it's hurting everyone?
I'm sure it does in some sense. I'm not convinced.
The way I look at it is like, say I could apply this to America, or I could apply this to the world, but like, you know, Americans have a certain amount of disposable income that they spend on entertainment, and that money goes to entertainment. It goes to movies, it goes to music, it goes to amusement parks, you know, what have you, like that. People are always going to spend money on things that entertain them, and that money is going to be there, and it's going to be paid to professionals and entertainers. And, you know, sure, it gets spread out a little bit more because there's a lot more people doing it, but I don't think that means that they take it any less seriously, or that, you know, that they think that they should be getting entertainment for free necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, people are still willing to pay $75 to go see a concert live, apparently, if they just see the values there. And I think overall that my frustration is when people look at it as a right, as something that's deserved. Because, you know, if you're trying to be a professional, it's like any job. You got to go. If you want to be a professional in some field, you got to prove that you're worthy of being paid that. You don't just do something.
Unless you're at a gig and a bunch of people come up to you and say, "Man, I love your album. I listen to it all the time." And you're thinking, you didn't buy it from me. I know all the streams where my album is available, and I know you didn't buy it.
On another indie project here in town, we played it was a pretty big opening slot that we played, and somebody came up after the show, "Man, I love your album. I didn't buy it from you. I just downloaded it for free off the internet." I'm like thinking, I don't really care, but I want to punch him for actually coming and telling me that.
See, that's the attitude Katie is against the most. The fact that it's so blatantly fine for the people to come up and tell you that. Like, at least have some couth and just be like, "Man, I like your album."
Yeah.
Don't say I stole it and I love it.
Right. Well, I'm all for respecting artists. Respect them, please.
One of our listeners, Scott Andrew, longtime listener to the podcast, a great guy. I've talked to him on the phone. He was kind of getting a little beat up in the thread there, because he was kind of making the opposite claim, you know, that you shouldn't be worried about it. You should be worried about providing something of value. And that's my thing, is that worry about how you can be valuable as an artist, whether it's doing something in your shows that it's like, you've got to see this guy play. You got to see them perform. Being different and just better than just what's considered average. Because if you're just kind of like whining and just complaining about, "Oh, people are downloading, people are doing this," and it's like, you've already lost. It doesn't matter what people do, you've lost. And the other thing that was interesting, you know, taking the idea of art and if people aren't compensated, I would say it was probably only until the last century or two where real artist got any sort of real compensation for a lot of their work anyway. Some of the greatest composers ever died dirt poor. And it wasn't until, years and years and years of people, rediscovering their music that they became, the pillars of the music world for the modern world,
It's always been tough being an artist. Ask Shakespeare.
We mentioned Scott. The reason why I brought him up partly is because in that thread, he did something very interesting. They shared kind of this idea to really pack out a show. And it was a good tip just in general. And Robert's got the whole step-by-step that he posted.
This is really cool. So. Great to hear what someone's done and as far as setting up a show and bringing in a good audience and sort of his reflections on that. So I'll just go ahead and read it real quick. Just as an aside, he says, here's what I did for my largest drawing show to date. Number 1, I built the show around an event, my birthday. Number 2, I selected a venue that was compatible with my genre, easy to find, and easy parking options. Number 3, I got permission from the venue to select the entire bill and laid out a promotion plan. Number 4, I scouted out compatible opening acts and I knew would bring in some additional crowd. Number 5, for 2 months in advance of the show, I offered advance tickets to my local fans through PayPal. Paying your admission in advance got you a special demo CD, a raffle ticket to win a t-shirt, and a cupcake. No kidding, we baked cupcakes for my birthday. Number 6, on the day of the show, I walked in and slapped down a prepaid VIP list and a huge wad of cash from the advance sales. Number 7, because people had prepaid and were promised something extra, the demo CD and the cupcake, our turnout was fantastic. No one blew it off at the last minute. Combined with the other acts' draw and the curious passers-by, the result was awesome attendance and a huge door, the biggest I'd ever earned, and the club was happy because they'd sold gallons of booze. The plan was not without its drawbacks, though. Of course, the venue wanted me to come back the very next week, and no way could I pull that off again. Also, I had to turn down other local gigs for months so as not to hurt my draw where it counted. Also, I didn't sell that many CDs at all because most of the crowd already owned the stuff. I had nothing to sell in addition, and I forgot to have someone work the mailing list, so I didn't even get one new sign-up out of all those people. Despite this triumph, a month later, I was back playing solo shows at coffee shops to a handful of strangers. I guess the overall lesson is this. The things that make lots of door money aren't always sustainable, and the things that are sustainable, like hanging flyers and showing up to play, don't do much for the door.
So I thought that was a cool idea and some good insights of, his experience and trying to put on a show, and it was a huge success. And that's the thing. It's if you want to be a musician, you can't be a concert promoter as well.
Yeah. Supports Katie's theory that throwing a good show is like planning a wedding.
Yeah.
There you go.
You have to bake cupcakes if you want to play live.
There you go. Hey, my new band our lead singer owns several cupcake shops here in town, so we got him in right now.
Nice.
You guys should definitely bring cupcakes to your show.
He still hasn't given me one, though.
Man, see, I'd definitely go free cupcakes.
Free cupcakes. So I thought that was some good insights, and it's not only just trying to find things that work once, but sustainability.
And it is, it is possible to build enough buzz that every show is like that. It's hard. It is. Obviously it's hard to sustain, but especially in a local area where you're trying to drag people out over and over again to see your music. But I know there are groups in town that consistently, sell out the venues that they're playing, and it doesn't have to just happen one time. It doesn't just have to happen on your birthday. But
I think what could be taken from that is that maybe do that 4 times a year.
Yeah.
And he's a solo artist, so that's a little more difficult. I believe he's a solo artist. He may have a backing band with him, but his website is just scottandrew.com, and it's just him, basically. So I'm assuming he's doing all the grunt work. But, if you've got a band, do that 4 times a year, and you'll grab more people. And the thing that's hard is you can't just focus on your friends. You got to get outside of your friends. You got to get new people.
Got to get your friends' friends.
Yeah, yeah. And, even when I was... When I was touring in Small Town Poets and we'd play a show, to like 1,000 people, it's sold out, and you're in LA and you're thinking, cool, we got 1,000 people here. And you're like, this is LA. There's like 5 million people here and only 1,000.
We invited everybody.
We can only get 1,000.
Not having someone manning the merch booth or the sign-up list is something I do all the time, a mistake I make all the time. Like I played a show the other night. It was amazing. The reception was great.
Yeah.
If I had just mentioned it from stage and said, Susie Q is over in the corner with the merch booth, I probably could have had a lot of sales, a lot of new names, and just slipped me by.
Email addresses, I think they're still that's the most intimate way of contacting your fans online. Facebook, MySpace, Twitter, all that stuff. I guess maybe Twitter you can sort of get a little bit more intimate with people, but I think that having a direct line into someone's inbox is just gold. You treat it respectfully.
Not 5 emails every day.
Yeah.
I would definitely love to hear people's feedback on this. I know it's a hot button issue, and several things I would like to hear. One is if you're finding a way to generate consistent income streams, we'd like to hear about it. Tricks, ideas, tips, things that you're doing that are working, that are generating income on a consistent basis, and, maybe ways that you've gone up against the mentality of the general public about you're just working for fun units. Which reminds me, we got podcast T-shirts being made, and they're on the way. But I was thinking we should have gotten one that said, I'm working for fun units. But so we'd love to hear your feedback. Our listener line is 206-426-5683. You can email us at info@cdbabypodcast.com or leave a comment under the show notes for this episode under the big 50 at cdbabypodcast.com. And speaking of listener feedback, let's get into your phone calls.
CD Baby Podcast.
Message line
206-426-5683.
The number you have dialed, 206-426-5683.
Hello there, this is the one and only Mr. Billy, kids rock and roll star from Wisconsin. I've been with you since episode number 1, and I'll be here till the very last one, and I hope there never is a last one, and we can both be here forever with all our friends. Listen to the CD Baby DIY Musicians Podcast. Rock on, everybody.
This is Slick for Days, CEO of Murder Cap Records. Upcoming single Around the World with No Draw Zone to be released in mid-March. We were going to Canada and record a CD, this one, because we were big fans of Rush. And Blizzard comes and we still decide to drive there all day and all night, record. On the way back, we get stopped by Canada Border Services. They seize the CDs saying they're too gangster. We get banned out of the country. As a result, we end up with 400,000 hits on Google, interviewed by MTV, Rolling Stone, XXL, every other major entertainment outlet on the planet Earth. Lesson, go do the work, stick to your guns, and it'll come out right.
This is Curiosity from Chicago, and I have a story about goose oversights or mishaps for the podcast, so here goes. Hey, this is Curiosity with a story of how I learned to be more assertive during a Chicago gig on Halloween weekend. My slot was right after a hair metal group who told the audience several times we aren't a cover band, and then proceeded to play a million Black Sabbath covers. These guys were visibly drunk and went way over their time limit, but the venue refused to intervene. Don't get me wrong, I know shows run late sometimes, but this was creeping up on 2 hours after I was supposed to go on. And it got so late that friends of mine who had come to see my act ended up leaving. Well, eventually the hair band stopped playing, and instead of packing up their stuff, they just stood on stage in a circle talking to one another. I waited about 15 minutes before marching over there and telling them to move their gear so that I could play, which they finally did. During this ordeal, the venue staff apologized profusely, but never offered to talk to the band or pull the plug or do anything. Next time this sort of thing happens, I won't give the band and the venue the benefit of the doubt, and I'll have my trusty cattle prod ready.
Nice.
Well, thank you for those phone calls. And yes, there's nothing more frustrating than a band who goes way over playing Black
And nothing
Sabbath
more
covers.
frightening than a folk singer with a cattle prod.
Yeah. But the second artist, the rap group, that call right there proves that a lot of times it has absolutely nothing to do with your music. It's all about a good story. All those news outlets, MTV, XXL, all those people wanted to cover their story because it was an interesting story. And I'm sure they gained a lot of exposure and some new fans because of it. And you don't have to always think about some story that has nothing to do with your music, even though that one did kind of tie in. They were coming back from recording and all that. But it's just the idea of, that's interesting, Yeah. Having an interesting story just totally makes people want to dig in and learn more and find out more about you as an artist and connect with your music after that, because they've kind of connected you on another level. And then, Mr. Billy, we always appreciate your support of the podcast, and so he's working on an ebook, actually.
Oh, really?
Of his wacky promotion ideas. So.
Excellent.
We hope to be here forever as well.
Yes, we do.
Mr. Billy was the one who told us the story about selling to Santa Claus, right?
Yes, he did. And then I had a couple of emails that I wanted to mention. One, I've been emailing back and forth with Dave from the band Dead Family, and he was telling me about how they got a big placement in The Wrestler, that movie that was just
Excellent movie, by the way.
And some very big name artists in there that his music is alongside. So we were emailing back and forth. I'm like, well, how on earth did you get that big of a placement? Because it's like these, major artists. And I don't know how much independent music they have in there, but they've got a lot of big name artists that I'm sure they paid a lot of money for. And he said that the director had just seen him play live a couple times and was fans of the band and wanted to use him in the show. And I've heard about a lot of placements happening that way. So I guess if you're in LA, you have an advantage for that. But it's just one of those things where, the people that use music aren't necessarily music fans or the people that you normally think about. They're not just people in the music industry. It pays to know the people in the film industry, the ad agencies, and all that stuff too. So, and another one was an email by Spike Nicer. I'm not sure if that's his real name or not, but he emailed about how he had his entire hard drive, his entire album on his hard drive, got it from the studio, was all excited, stuck it on the back of his motorcycle, duct taped it to the motorcycle, bungee corded it to the motorcycle, and drove for an hour. And by the time he got to his destination, the hard drive was still there. I was waiting when I was reading it. I was expecting to find out the hard drive smashed all over the freeway. Yeah. But the motorcycle had vibrated so much that it completely destroyed the inner workings of the hard drive because he had duct taped it right to the... And the computer repair people said it was basically like, there's this little needle thing that reads it. And like it had been jackhammering on it. There was no way to recover the information. So rule, you always have multiple backup copies of your album. And
don't duct tape it to your motorcycle.
Yeah, he lost everything. Fortunately, the studio worked out a deal and he redid it. But man, sometimes you just can't recreate the magic. So that was a good tip.
Wow.
I think that's
terrible.
I know.
I think that's everything. We made it through 50.
Okay, we should put our clothes back on now.
Yeah, that's right. Hopefully we'll be here for another 50 more. And we appreciate your support. And don't forget iTunes podcast page.
Give us a good review. Robert is handsome.
Robert is handsome. That's right. I think here's what we'll do. Like I mentioned, we have new podcast shirts on the way that we're going to use for some freebies for various things and sell as well. So I think for the first maybe 5 people that write a review and somewhere in the review mention Robert is handsome, I will give them a free podcast t-shirt. So let's make it happen, people.
Yes, let's do it.
And I'm still disappointed. No one's called us from a rehearsal. That's very disappointing. So we want to hear some tunes. And please, no phone calls while you're eating dinner, walking through the mall, and doing all sorts of various other things.
Or underwater.
We get lots of calls that we can't use because of that. So, again, our listener line is 206-426-5683 and info@cdbabypodcast.com. And we'll catch you next time.
Peace.
Bye. You've been listening to the CD Baby DIY Musician Podcast, broadcasting from Portland, Oregon, USA.